Sekou, Oney, welcome to the Love and Other Delusions podcast.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I have been excited about this conversation since we decided to go ahead with it. I got to tell you, I really wish that I had have met you much sooner into my arrival into the US.
That would have been fun. I mean, I think I've only been to LA. Where you're further south, right?
I'm as pretty much south as you can get, San Diego.
Yeah. So I was out there probably about a year and a half ago, before I was taking another journey somewhere. I forgot the hell I was going on that trip, but yeah, that would have been fun because I was looking for people to hang out with when I was out in LA for a short period of time.
We'll know each other the rest of our lives now, though. It's just that kind of, when you meet people that you're like, my life will be richer for cultivating this relationship.
Indeed.
And this is definitely one of them. You and I connected at a time in American history where clusterfuck's about the right word, right?
Yeah, spot on.
I try.
You are spot on.
And before we get into the clusterfuck, why don't we talk a little bit about like where you are, what you do, a bit about your history. Tell us about Sekou Oney.
Sekou Oney was born in New York, raised in Delaware. I was pretty much a country boy. I'm not Southern, but I'm country because that you have to clarify that on the East Coast, especially towards the South. I'm country, but not Southern. Okay. So I grew up around horses, crops, fields, and all that type of outside. And then I went to school at Delaware State University, graduated there, went to my master's degree in DC, got into nonprofit. I was a personal trainer for a little while. Then I started working in accounting. That's kind of that was my specialty, was like finance and banking. Numbers. And that's what mom and dad told me to do. So really? I followed that route. Yeah, if I think I told you before, if I had my choice, I'd be a race car driver right now.
Oh yeah.
But I'd be not the Bubba Wallace, but maybe I'd give Lewis Hamilton a run for his money. That and the fact that my left eye can't really see too much. So.
That might hinder, but there's LASIK for that. There's always CRISPR that can help those kinds of things as well.
Indeed. So, but yeah, so for the last 12 years, I've been working for the U.S. government. I started at Department of Agriculture as a budget analyst, working in food safety and inspection. So interesting how I could relay that to Delaware because it was agriculture. It's a 45%, 48% agriculture state. So most of everything that Delaware produces is pretty much going to be produce and agriculture. And then went over to Department of Defense. I've been working there for about a solid 7 or 8 years. I've been a research analyst, budget analyst, financial management analyst, ops research analyst in Afghanistan. I've done the whole analyst spectrum, and I'm now a program analyst with financial management for executive services for the Air Force, and currently looking into demographic data for the Air Force and trying to give senior leaders a depiction of what the Air Force actually looks like from civilian officer and enlisted side of things. And I work a slew of other projects, but that's just my main one I'm kind of looking into now.
So there's a disconnect there. They can't quite see how civilians see them?
Well, what I'll speak for on the DoD side is that civilians, enlisted, and officers, separate.
Right.
All separate categories. And every category has their own system that manages them. So the civilians have their own, officers have their own. I don't think we have like OPM, Office of Personnel Management.
That's an unfortunate name.
Yeah.
It sounds like opium.
Not quite. It's a little bit different.
A little bit different, but it's all in the nuance, right?
Indeed. But they manage the civilians for the most part, but when you come to DoD and you see the military side, that's a whole different animal. So there's not a system that just says, hey, here's everybody you have. And here's every piece of everything that you have. So we've got contractors and myself trying to stitch together all these different elements of different spreadsheets and different everything you can imagine to try to bring everything together into like a data lake and then be able to publish it out into a readable format using software.
I'm just so shocked that government systems don't run well.
So
I say that tongue in cheek only because
I know I'm about to say, like, wait a minute.
No,
you should know
it's the
that.
Aussie sarcasm. Well, fuck yeah, I know that. I used to work for a multinational software company as a senior business analyst, and so just like, you know, it's not hard for people to find out who that was. It's on my LinkedIn, but at the same time, it's like you go in there, and part of the reason why I left corporate was because it's nothing like what you think it is. People just assume that all these systems speak to each other because they're supposed to speak to each other. And then when you realize that the reason that like commission systems don't connect with HR systems and people aren't getting paid right, et cetera, and you're the person who's saying, hey, like these two systems have never spoken to each other. You haven't paid virtually anybody correctly. And some people have been paid too much and some people haven't been paid enough and they left the company 20 years ago, et cetera, and they're like, shh.
So now you're talking about the US government, which is the biggest business entity known to mankind. We handle billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. And so now you have that add in that, it's these systems change throughout the years. And so maybe a particular contracting organization says, hey, we can handle that for you. And there's a chief or a general that's about to retire and it says, hey, that's a good idea. I want that on my nameplate before I leave. And that change happens, but it's not fully thought through. And then it lasts for a couple of years and then somebody else is about to retire and then somebody else says, oh no, I want this system. And so it changes and you got to understand, like, there's hundreds of COCOMs and MAGCOMs and field operating agents, organizations. It's just huge, it's massive. We're in all these different countries, right? So it gets kind of convoluted when you talk, especially finances, and then when you talk personnel, it gets kind of, and that's just talking people that you can have on the books as opposed to people that you're not supposed to see on the books. So it's very, very interesting and very convoluted and opaque, but it's a job.
Well, and also it's this, another technical word, fuckery of people making very high level decisions about things that echo down and ripple down through into very real life ramifications.
Oh yeah.
You know, if these systems aren't talking correctly to each other, these affect people not getting paid, getting underpaid, people not getting health insurance the way that they need to, et cetera. And the disconnect between what I call, people use the word privilege, I call it inherent entitlement. The inherently entitled, being able to make these decisions without having to see the consequence firsthand of the ramifications of those decisions. Think it, you know, again, these are the kinds of things that I had to piece out of the corporate world for. Because it became very apparent that it's not going to change. The power structures evolve. The rolling power structures and the revolving door around them are so politicized now. It's not necessarily about, is this the right leader to affect the change that needs to be happened, whether it be in an organization or within a government. I mean, that leads us straight into exactly what's going on in this country right now, right? How are you a day after? And for anyone wondering, we are obviously pre-recording this podcast. It is the day after the Breonna Taylor decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached out to you yesterday to see how you were, and I couldn't imagine what that's done for you and how that's affected you. Are you okay talking about it?
I'm okay. I'm okay now. I think it's a wide array of conversation that can be had, right? But I can tell you from my understanding right now and how I feel, a lot of the gutted feel has kind of already transpired when you see half the videos you've seen on Instagram or television or whatever you've seen. If you've seen it enough, you've kind of been gutted enough, and it's traumatizing every time you see something like that. But the expectation for justice wasn't there for Breonna.
You didn't have an expectation?
I didn't have an expectation. I didn't
Tell
think
me
there
why.
was going to be. I'm just saying, like, there has, in most, if not all, I won't say all because I don't like using those words.
Yep.
But there's been a majority of cases where, tell me a case where there's a police officer that shot an unarmed Black person who's ever been prosecuted. Like, it's possible to find that, but the majority of those decisions, even with press coverage, there's these loopholes in the legal systems that we've seen, and it's continuous. There's these loopholes that say, hey, well, we felt that, hey, their approach, and they said they yelled police before they rammed in the door, but no witnesses besides one says that, oh, I think I might have heard somebody say police. Traditionally, if somebody's banging on my door and yelling police, I'm already, you know what I mean? It's just kind of some of those things that don't add up. And what I'll say is that my expectation wasn't there that she was going to get justice for this. My expectation is that people of color and white people are starting to really see that there are some significant challenges in our legal system. Like, the disparity is unreal. And what I think and I hope is that I wasn't discouraged. I was even more motivated to keep fighting, because I think that's the definition of the Black spirit. I think Black people have defined courage so much so because we've had to. We don't have a choice yet to defy courage every day, to drive down the street, to
can be life-threatening.
I don't know. If you ever had to call the police to your home, God forbid, if something happened at your house, like, we just don't know what could happen. And then, I'm not saying this again, I don't have any, I have police officer friends that are white and Black, and conversations are short because they are kind of short sometimes when we try to have some of these conversations, because I understand what a police officer's job is to do, and I understand what protect and serve. But when the lawlessness of police officers and police aren't being accountable, that's where I defer, and I kind of, I think, again, I'm really encouraged that I think the world is waking up. I think the cage has been rattled, and I didn't expect Breonna Taylor's family or her death to fully be justified. I didn't expect there was going to be an outcome for it. I didn't expect these police officers to get charged. There was no expectation, because we've seen this too many times before. You can't keep doing it over and over, and then
it wears you down.
So before, I think, Trayvon Martin and a few other deaths that have occurred have been so psychologically
damaging.
Yeah, it's been that bad, to the extent of, to see the legal system. It's hurting. It's depressing, but it's one of those things where we see it. Now we have to do something about it. And I can tell you, at least from my perspective, I think it's at a breaking point. I don't think there's too many people of color, there's too many white people, there's too many Arabs, Muslims, there's too many
expats,
everybody who's just kind of like, you know what, this is not, you know what, we can't. And if you saw the marching in the streets, they're not just Black people in those streets.
no.
It's a diverse group of individuals out there willing to get shot at, willing to be arrested by police, willing. I think we're at a point now. I don't think this is going to be the changing point for everything, but I think this is going to be the start. Let alone this, whatever this election outcome is going to be in November. I think this is just a real awakening, and hopefully we start to begin to create a legal system that's going to be fair, maybe 100 years from now. I don't know when, but we're hoping that the fairness and equality will happen eventually. But I know I might not even see that true equality in my lifetime. So again, that expectation level is kind of.
I know you weren't expecting that this would be any kind of justice. And it almost sounds like the person who was conducting, forgive me for not remembering his name, but the person who was conducting the investigation almost seems disappointed that he wasn't able to find legal ramification for being able to press charges. And he himself said that the law isn't always fair.
Mm-hmm.
But the law always seems to bend itself the way it needs to bend itself for certain kinds of people.
Indeed. You know that all too well.
And this is why I was like, surely these people can see that if this doesn't start to penetrate the forces of oppression and break that system down, we're going to have a fucking revolution on our hands that's going to echo into different dimensions.
Yep. I truly believe, I want to watch out my words here, but I truly believe that we are on that verge. You know what I mean? It's kind of
very much so.
We are on that verge. I think the good thing is we got a president that blew the ashes on that fire and blew the coals and stirred it up. And now everybody's starting to show themselves truly like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I represent. And not saying people who are not educated do or don't see anything. It's just that some individuals are starting to see the humanistic qualities and traits of, hey, that's another human being. Like, why is that happening? Because I've had so many people who just, you know, in my circle, my groups, and my even coworkers who just had no idea what Black people were going through as a whole. You know, some people never understood that, like, hey, when Black people go to the store and they walk into the store and they, you know, oh, left my wallet in the car. Oh, I have, I didn't see what I wanted. We have to double check and like make sure that we're not here stealing anything. Yeah, you can see that. Like when we get stopped by police, it is a life and death situation for us every time. Like even if it's a small, you know what I mean? Like my coworkers did, you know, I talked to my coworkers. If you don't know what it's like to have a gun drawn on you at a traffic stop, if you don't know what it's like to get pulled out of your car because, you know, you got tinted windows, not speeding, not anything else like that, just pulled out of your car, 5 cop cars pulled out behind you and dogs called on you because they think you have drugs in your vehicle just because you're out of state. People just really have no idea what the average Black man or Black woman goes through. And I think people are starting to see it. And that's the only thing I think what's happening now is that people are really starting to like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Like y'all really go through this on a regular? Oh, wow. Really? Like, yes.
That's the
really?
part that really confused me about living here in America. The number of people who, and I'm going to sound really naive here. I don't mind sounding naive in front of you. I thought that people who were successful got that way. This is before, when I first kind of moved into the business world, probably 15 years ago, and America cured me of this. I thought that people who were successful because they treated people well, because they were intelligent, because, you know, this was some kind of way that they were getting paid back for hard work. And I guess I was informed of this because that's kind of how it was a lot of the time when I was a kid growing up in Sydney, as of, you know, in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was all quite idealistic to my naive little Catholic Arab girl's eyes.
Yeah.
Being in America, I heard some of the craziest shit I'd ever heard from white CEOs who were telling me that, you know, they were having conversations with their buddies on the golf course and saying, did you all know that black people go through this shit?
It's interesting.
And I'm like,
I mean, you talk about, it's from the CEOs on down, though. You got to understand, like, there's some folks that are just completely no idea. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, right? So we're in an area like the DMV, Delaware. Well, Delmarva is Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. Have to shout out Delaware, but the DMV is DC, Maryland, Virginia. And so in this area,
the place where you get your license.
Please don't. don't talk about that. Anybody's listening, they're gonna be like, "Oh crap! Wait a minute, what?"
Correct.
The behind story is I will keep my Delaware tags on my vehicle until they come take them off. Delaware people know about black tags, and I got black tags on my vehicle. Okay. You gotta Google it. It's a real thing.
Black tags?
Black tags in Delaware.
Yeah. What's that about?
I don't know where it started, but I do know it was a thing where it's a black and white tag. So Delaware is blue and gold is the state colors. Yeah. And there's a black and white tag. And it's kind of like, it's not necessarily a special edition, but it's a tag that they only have so many of.
Oh, it's very fancy.
So, and right. And there's only 99,999. And if you have one of those tags, the lower the number, the better. So I think the governor of Delaware has the tag that has number 1 on it. And then any 2-digit tag, Google, you'll see how much it is. A 2-digit Delaware tag can go for like $28,000-$30,000.
You all have too much money.
I got the tag when it was like a $40.
What's the?
And I got a 5-digit tag, so it's not really fancy, but it's one of those things that they really you can pass it. Yeah, you can pass the tags on to like your family. It's a whole thing. It's a Delaware thing.
Wow, but it's like rent control in New York.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So going back to what got us onto Delaware tags? You and I both
the DMV.
Into cars.
I was talking about DMV in Delaware, and then talking about the it's a good mix. And I would say Northern Virginia. I'm not sure about the rest of Virginia. I know Virginia Beach and Richmond and Hampton areas, they have a little bit, I would say, color there, diversity. I think as you go to certain other parts of Virginia, I'm not sure about the diversity because I don't know much about Virginia. I just got here, really, technically. But I just bought a house here this year, literally. So that it's very multicultural in this area. So you don't really see it in your face as much. Even the police, it doesn't seem like it's, it's not like, hey, racism is right in your face or anything like that. Now we know it's here. We can look at the elections and see, well, I'm not going to blame elections on racism. I'm going to say we can see how divided Virginia is by Northern Virginia and the rest of Virginia. Okay. And we can see by voting, it's a very weird, the majority of the state is red, but where the control is I guess the northern part, which is blue, and they can kind of control the electoral votes for the state. And it's pretty interesting. But
Is it very lily white?
Say it one more time.
Is it lily white? The people that are in power. Is it a multicultural leadership committee?
I have no idea. I just got here. I can tell you from being a Maryland resident after when I got here for graduate school, I stayed out in Maryland for the most part. Virginia was that one place that everybody was like, oh no, don't go to Virginia, man. Like, don't even drive through Virginia, because Virginia has certain laws and certain everything that's a little bit different. Like, you can get arrested for speeding in Virginia, and their police literally hide in bushes and jump out in the middle of a highway when people are going like 55, 60 miles an hour. They will run from the bushes into the middle of the highway.
Yeah, see, this is the kind of fuckery that I feel like there was a time in the world where being a cop transitioned from serve and protect to I'm going to catch you and oppress you. That happened in Australia. That happened here. It's become this thing of I'm going to go and catch you doing something wrong. And instead of like it being about catching people who were doing shit wrong that were going to hurt other people, people started slapping quotas on them. You've got to have this many tickets because the police are now part of the revenue generating mechanism for that. So you weaponize a force of people that you weaponize them with power to oppress other people. And then that becomes a place that people who want to feel important get attracted to.
I call it a sense of control, because I think when you see a lot of the unease between people of color and police and law enforcement, there's always a sense of wanting to control. And there is not a sense of, let me listen to this person. Let me try to understand the situation. Let me try to, they have no, sometimes when it comes to that disagreement between law enforcement and people of color, sometimes it always comes from a place, well, I control you, so I'm going to tell you what to do.
It's this,
and I'm going to, you're going to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. And it's immediate. It's not like
no, you can see it turn.
Yeah. It's not like again, you can look at some traffic stops when it comes to Black males being stopped, and some traffic stops when it comes to Caucasian males. It's a different attitude that a police officer may have. And that's not every police officer. I'm not generalizing police. I'm just saying that when you see some of these disagreements, you're starting to see like, well, I'm in control. You do what I tell you to do or else. And you'll see the aggression that comes out. I want to hurt you. I'm going to throw you on your back. I'm going to throw you on the pavement. I'm going to put my knee in your freaking body until you suffocate and die. Like that, want to control and like hurt somebody. It comes out, and you can easily see it, because how much does it take? You know what I mean? Like, even to pull a gun out instead of actually like using, I don't know, your taser or something else of some sort, instead of like a non-lethal weapon to somebody who may even be hostile. It's not that. It's an immediate. You know what I mean? And there's plenty of videos out there where there's, Caucasian males or females that might have stolen a cop car right from a cop because they were resisting and then they got away. There's, it just doesn't, it's two different things. And that sense of control is there. And I don't know, I think that's the biggest thing when we relate it back to companies, and, that's another dialogue, but there's a sense of control that's there. That's kind of, it's there.
One way that I tried to learn about Black culture when I moved here was through exploring rap music. I think we've had this conversation maybe, unless I had it with Reggie, but
probably Reggie.
But on my other podcast. For people that are listening, Reggie is Sekou's business partner. We'll talk about that later. But I really started to get a very deep understanding of what you're talking about from exploring Meek Mills
Oh, me.
and watching the Meek Mills documentary, because
Hmm.
I'm a big Jay-Z fan.
Hmm.
Um, I started to learn about Black culture back in Australia through his music, and was very confused by it because it's a whole different way of life.
Hmm.
And being someone who's from the music industry, I would often see people sing about things that they didn't
Hmm.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was theatrical, or it was over dramatized or whatever. And I wasn't quite sure if the things that Jay-Z was rapping about
Yeah.
were just stories that he'd heard or things he'd experienced from his own life. And excuse my ignorance on that, but it's not my culture, right?
It's, you know what? That's an accurate depiction, because out of the X amount of countries I've been able to visit, that is how a majority of the world gets a perception of Black Americans, I'll call us, because it's either through hip hop or through some type of sports figure. So,
Right.
and they watch TV in order to get that. And you really don't really see the true diaspora of Black people until you get here, and then you go to certain Black communities, and then you see the Black doctors, lawyers,
Right.
congressmen, the all of that. But some of the stories that are being told in hip hop, they are true stories. These are real accounts
Yeah.
of real individuals. And Jay-Z being up in New York, and Meek being in Philly, like, everybody has their stories from their cities, which, again, if we dig deeper, those are areas that where Black people were pushed towards. And the policing there was done by individuals who never lived there. So the only way you get away from that is by sometimes going down to Atlanta, where you saw, I think, the beginning of that city was started by Black Americans, and a lot of the business owners, the police, and everything were all Black. And so you get a different diaspora change down there from historical, and then it moves forward until you start to see that change. But hip hop is one of the ways the world gets to see Black Americans and understand kind of like some of the things we've gone through.
And you get this real kind of idea of like, well, is Jay-Z just rapping about this stuff because he wants it's some kind of flex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you dig it a bit deeper, you start listening to independent artists, and you listen
Mm-hmm.
to other artists, you watch some documentaries about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I watched the Meek Mills. I really didn't understand the whole injustice between the way people would tell me that the Black community was being treated by police
Mm-hmm.
and the way the white community gets treated by police. And again, that I'm not generalizing there. I'm saying on average, there's a
Mm-hmm.
clear difference. And, you hear conversations on other podcasts. I listen to Rogan's podcast a lot, and you would hear conversations between Jocko Wilkins
Mm-hmm.
and Joe, and you'd hear these conversations about how there's no effort to de-escalate.
Mm-hmm.
There's no effort to chill out the situation in a
Mm-hmm.
way that allows for conversation when we're dealing with members from the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
But so many videos that you see of cops dealing with white people, the first step is de-escalation.
But the confrontation between a white police officer and possibly a white male who's irate is completely different. It's not even de-escalation at some points in times. It's literally like, well, he's an American and he's this and he's that. And you get that feel of the cop is backing down instead
Okay.
of like de-escalating. The cop feels like there's like a feeling of like, well, wait a minute, this guy is going crazy to
There
this
must be
police
something
officer.
wrong.
And like, when that happens, if a Black person does that, oh no, that is a completely different, opposite reaction, and there's something there in the mental space between literally that colorism between black and white that sometimes it's there. We can easily see it that,
Yeah.
you know, police officer walking to the vehicle with his hand on his weapon. Now, I know in a lot of cases they do that, but there's some cases that is broad daylight and there's no tinted vehicle, you know, it's a Honda Civic, and you might kind of be like, I don't know, but let's see what's going on, if the tags are good or yada yada yada. I don't know, but I can tell you you can see from traffic stops easily on visual that, hey, there's a different approach from Caucasians to people of color.
You as a numbers man, you as an analyst, I'd love to hear your take on this. A number of white men who do not live in Australia, around the world, who listen to my other podcast, Map It Forward, and have heard me talk about this, even though it's a coffee podcast.
Yeah.
And they contact me on the sly and say, Lee, I wouldn't have picked you as someone that was as gullible to defend, to defend the black community on this. You understand that it's all hype. The data actually says,
wow.
Yeah, the data actually says that there's no disparity between the way that the black community is treated by police versus the white community. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm a data analyst. I was. So could you tell me the integrity of the data that you're referring to, please?
It gets crazy because data is everything, right? And people are starting to understand that.
Good data is everything.
Yeah.
Good data
is everything. And
bad data is bullshit.
Correct. And now we're getting into a place where skewed data, right? So
manipulated data.
I was in a data analytics course earlier this year, and we talked about how on the news you could throw out a graph and it could be saying like, well, the numbers are going down for you know, shootings of unarmed black men, et cetera, in this area, but they could be literally going up based on they changed the year scope in a year. They were doing analysis by annual before, and now they're doing it by day to day. Like they do those small things.
Trickery,
you can make
fuckery.
you can manipulate any numbers you want to, but that's where it gets scary, is that you let somebody like me actually see the numbers and I'll show you the true numbers. You know what I mean? And that's where like I'm starting to really, really have a passion for data. Like I've never been a data. I'm like a cars guy. I'm like, I like, was that Corvette or was that a Toyota Supra? Yeah, yada. I was like, oh, okay, that's got a 383 stroker motor. Now. You know, oh, that's an LS. Okay, all right. Oh, that's a JZ. 2 JZ, but when you start talking about like, all right, these other data figures, like I'm actually, you know, the more and more I get into it, now getting into coffee, it's really interesting to see that numbers can really, especially if they're accurate, what you can pull from that data and the tests that you can do on that data to even depict more analysis of what is really going on. And you sent me that Netflix special on, what was that?
The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma, and how that was psychology used, but a lot of that still had to be used on data. All the data had to be collected, and then from that data it was extracted, and a psychologist got involved, and it was just like, oh, now we're going to screw people over.
They bring in gaming scientists to trick you to influence the data. I mean, it's an unwinnable game. Because you have people who are specialists in manipulating your psychology and your adrenal system to trick you into needing to be drawn to this. But going back to that thing where these people are talking about, you know, I wouldn't have thought that you could be tricked into believing this bullshit about, you know, blah, blah, blah. When you start to stress test their reasoning and come to realize that their reasoning is based on second, third, fourth hand information that usually comes from QAnon, you come to realize that we're living in a society that gets their information from headlines.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on who you're watching. Like, what news outlet are you watching? Because I can give
News Weekly
CNN
usually
this data, or I can give you Fox News, or I can give Fox News, CNN, and Reuters the same brick of data, and I guarantee you they would have 3 separate constructs
absolutely
of the numbers. And that's where we are. We don't know what news outlet to really truly believe, because everybody does it. Now it's one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, I thought, it was just one particular news outlet. No, everybody does some things to a certain degree that skews numbers.
And people don't understand, like, for anyone who's listening who doesn't understand how easy it is to manipulate this data, you can simply leave a set of variables out when you're analyzing the data. You're still not lying.
Nope.
But this is like a lying by omission. And so simply by not including the full data set and just running the analysis based on only a couple of variables or touch points within the data that you've got, you can get a completely different outcome than if you were to run the analysis with all the variables included.
Mm-hmm.
And people are using it to trick people. We're in a time when data's being weaponized.
Yep. It is a sad case where I don't know. I think I watch several news outlets, and even the news outlets I'm not supposed to be looking at, because I'm like, oh, they're obviously just crazy. But that's, in this time and place and individuals' understanding of different people, we're all thinking each other's crazy, because the folks that are out, who are Fox News lovers, are thinking CNN news lovers are crazy, and CNN news lovers are thinking Fox News lovers are crazy. And we're at our extremes based on what the numbers or data presented by those particular news outlets, and then whatever that news outlet's objective is. Is it to catch your eye, to catch your know-how, or is it to incite something in you to, I don't know, possibly do something? That whole social dilemma thing just really got me. So I was just like,
I knew you'd love it. And this is what I mean. Like, I wish that I had have met you when I first moved to America, because we could have been having these conversations.
Indeed, yeah.
From back then, going back to the Meek Mills thing, if anyone isn't aware of the Meek Mills situation, it is unfortunately the ultimate gateway into understanding the fuckery in the way that the Black community is treated, and the absolute devastating level of injustice that Meek Mills endured when it came to, and he was the worst part about it, the judge was a Black woman who, whether she was very, very clearly trying to make a point with Meek Mills, and the justice system, she bent, and I have to say allegedly, I'm just checking in with my whole, she allegedly bent and yielded the justice system to keep him imprisoned for so long that he missed out a whole chapter of his career and his life unnecessarily, for no reason, purely because the cops thought that they saw someone who looked like him.
Now just think the magnitude of that is one sector of our legal system. And you think about the Constitution, and it wasn't intended. African Americans weren't included. We were still property at that point in time. Now think about, from the beginning, we were never really set up to be in this system, right? It's not really intended for us, and laws have been made this entire time as we progressed to keep us either incarcerated or to keep us in, whatever housing developments, yada, yada, yada. We couldn't even go to school when we first, we got HBCUs, shout out to Delaware State. Like we had to do so much to keep overcoming from then. And then I guess people just really still didn't see it. But the problem was, I heard this probably a year ago. It's the difference between history and it's a difference in his story, because his story is different than history, because we're starting to learn. I think it's really good that people are starting to get educated and starting to do the research to figure out, like, okay, what's really going on? Because we see a lot of the legal system, a lot of things that have happened in the past towards, Black Americans in the past have all been covered up. It's been kind of washed to the side. It's kind of been, Black people have been put in jail, and the key's been thrown away, and their case has been, under and whatever. There's so many things that are still resurfacing right now that have occurred in the Black community years ago that now are like, oh, okay, wait a minute, what happened there? Like, well, we see that this attorney, we see that this prosecutor, we can see they were all in the same family. Like we're just now starting to see a lot of things that were uncovered that we already knew about, but Black people already knew. We were like, oh, we're just not going to get justice. It's something we already kind of accepted. So it's just interesting now to get back to your point about certain people of certain echelons are saying you're falling for that whole, everybody's equal, everybody's fine. And it's like, it's really hard. But I think it's hard for a Caucasian American right now to fully fathom what a Black American has gone through. But I think if you try and you start listening, and we put our pride to the side and our egos to the side, and you can kind of start to listen, and you can start to kind of smidge understand, like, oh, wait a minute. They have some points to that. They have some actualities to that. There is some like effed up going on. There's some effed up stuff going on in the Black community that's been done by white people. And it's not just the legal system. We're talking about corporate America. We're talking about the police system. We're talking about the military. We're talking about like anywhere and everywhere. We're talking about racing. We're talking about and Wall Street. Like we can talk about many sectors where in coffee, we can talk about any sector where it's kind of like something's not right. You know what I mean? Something's just not right. And if we dig deeper and we really want to understand some things, it's there. You just have to be open to actually listening and seeing what's going on.
When I made my first Black friend here, he was a professor in psychology. And we were having a conversation, and it was really important to him that we had, what's the best way to say it? Like, I was having a conversation with him as a human. We had great intellectual conversations. And I just really enjoyed having fantastic conversations with this person. And he challenged me on recognizing his Blackness. And I didn't understand that statement. And I said to him, but your color is irrelevant to me. You're a human. And I want to have a conversation with you. And I don't see you as a Black man. I see you as a man. I see you as my equal. If anything, I'm a peg down from you because I'm a woman. Because that's how I see it. That's what I've been told all my life, is that I'm less than you because you're a man and I'm a woman. Your color's irrelevant to me. I wasn't even brought up with this concept of color. I was definitely brought up with the concept of like race, like, I was the wrong race in Australia. And so therefore I was outcast, and we were, we were wogs in Australia. And we were considered stupid and we were discriminated against and we were considered all of these things. But it was worse because I was a woman. So, you know, I was told by the Arabs, you're less, because that's the messaging that was given to me. But this friend of mine, he took offense when I said to him that I didn't see. It was irrelevant to me what color he was. And he took that to heart. And I said to him, but shouldn't that be a good thing? I don't understand what the problem is. If I'm saying to you, I'm seeing you as a human. And it took me a long time to understand that we were both missing what was being said there. I didn't have the cultural reference to understand the significance of the disparity that is experienced between the Black community and pretty much everybody else in the country. And he didn't have the understanding that I am well aware of racism. I have experienced it all my life, as well as sexism. And my aspiration is to communicate with and engage with everybody on an equal level.
There's a, oh crap, I forgot, but it was a 1616, I believe, project, and they were talking about where the concept of race, I believe, was formed. And it's interesting dialogue because from that, it has progressed forward to where it is now. And one of the worst issues that we've had is that African Americans, Black Americans, Blacks, people of color in this country weren't seen as human beings. We were seen as property. And if we're starting there for a conversation piece,
right,
and then look at how we've been looked at across the world. I mean, this is not just here. I mean, the shun, the bad look of African or Black have been so badly, the image has been so bad portrayed across the world of that, like, you know, Black is bad. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get into like, well, I want to get into like, in Asia where, you know, people block themselves from the sun with umbrellas and bleach their skin. I'm not going to, we can get into where even African Americans and Africans, we kind of go back and forth sometimes because we talk about there's a lot of nuances that go on. And then there was the issues when way back in the, not I'm gonna say way back in the day, but there was a difference between light skinned and Black or darker skinned Black people here in the States at one point in time. It might be still a thing in certain places, but it still plays a thing across the globe, even South America, Central America. We can talk about they call the Black side of the country versus the not Black side, I guess where some of the slave ports were at, or where some of the slave ships came at, or where Black people just migrated to because they traveled and they were traveling before Christopher Columbus. So it's a lot of, there's a lot of
trauma,
bullshit that comes from Black, white, darker, lighter, and there's a difference in, to your point, we're human beings. And I think when we have the conversation here in the States, it gets difficult because you got to understand we weren't seen as human beings, we were seen as property. And that's why it has such a magnitude effect over here, because we started from property and not being lesser than one-third of man, and then we slowly have moved to where we are now, and we're still technically, to some people, not human beings. We're not being treated like human beings. You know what I mean? Well, Breonna Taylor, we're not being treated as human beings. You know what I mean? When it comes to law enforcement at times, and that's the only thing Black people are still trying to get to. But it's going to be hard for anybody who's never, you know, even somebody who's a CEO worked their way up, and it's not until you actually look into the details of things and actually start asking questions. And when people present information to you, you have to have some interest into it. You have to have some I mean, we've been places where we've seen diversity and we've seen places thrive. You know what I mean? Uh, like New York, a very diverse place. That place thrives. Where New York Stock Exchange, it's where so many things are, but it thrives off diversity. Even though maybe if we look at certain corporations and companies, that it gets skewed to who's actually at the top.
And there are some companies that, you know, to put a more exciting spin on some of the developments that have happened that I've witnessed over this year, some of the CEOs that I have spoken to, because for some reason they all fucking call me when this shit falls over.
You're the go-to.
I am the go-to. And they're like, I don't understand what's going on. And so we'll have a conversation about it. I guess because I'm the person who will challenge people. If my bullshit radar goes off, I'm going to tell them. And so when they say to me, is it really as bad as people are saying? And so one conversation that I had when this CEO had gone back to their team and started to have open, honest conversations and really look at the situation, it was fantastic. Because for the first time they realized every single employee in their business was white, 100% of the employees. And the thing was, they'd never thought to check. And the really exciting thing about this movement, whatever this movement is, because I feel like there's so many movements happening right now with race relations. But if all it's doing is presenting people with the opportunity, even the most gentle, kind-hearted, well-intended people, if it's giving them the opportunity to say, oh shit, I was a passive participant in this kind of white supremacy that exists around me, by not being conscious of having diversity around me. Everyone that goes to my church is white. Everyone that works for me is white. All my neighbors are white. And like everyone around me is really happy and really good. And I give money to help poor people. And but hold on. How do you hire people? Like, well, we put out an email into the company and say to people, like, we've got a position that's available. Does anybody know anyone that would be perfect for it? And I'm like, okay, so you're asking white people if they know anyone.
Nepotism.
Correct. It's this, but here's the exciting part about it, is the moment that you point it out, that's the light bulb moment. And this is why, me.
For those willing to hear it.
Right.
Because there's some individuals that are kind of like.
Right. They're too scared to end up
like, you can't tell me I'm wrong because of how I live my life and yada, 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 yada. Like, I'm not wrong for.
Right. But the way, this is where intentional, high quality conversation is important. I'm a massive advocate for that. In our industry, in the coffee industry, it's something that I'm really driving very hard. This idea of independent thinking, this idea of, hey, listen, you don't have to be married to your ideas. Just kind of approach a discussion with the intention of learning about somebody else's experience. Like, let the richness of their experience wash over you. Let it inspire you. Let it inspire you to be a better person, or to want to desire to have the same kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
That feeds and drives life. It turns on all the right signals in your brain. This is why I say, like, I wish I had met you when I first moved here, because I experienced a hell of hurt trying to find good people here in San Diego. And when we started talking earlier this year, it became this thing of like, fuck, I'm so glad I met this person, They have had a wealth of experience in the world, but fuck, where were they 5 years ago? And I could have like, because the world starts to make sense to me for some reason this year.
Mm.
I don't know what it was about this pandemic, but this was the year when the pandemic hit. I'm like, this now all makes sense to me. This is a world I fit into.
Mm.
And I can't quite explain why. Perhaps I was really worried at the beginning of it when I started to have this realization. It's like, oh, maybe I keep myself in a state of anticipating trauma.
Mm.
And that's why, because everybody's having a shared trauma experience right now, many shared trauma experiences.
Mm.
And I don't think that's it. I think it's just that I was one of these people like you that had invested in my character rather than invested in shiny things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was when the things that we went without, but the things that we cultivated came to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your character pays off now.
Big time. I mean, it's where we had the conversation before. It's easy to see bullshit. Like when you have a great character and you're a genuine human being, oh man, you can have such a great conversation with another great, genuine human being, but it's so easily to spot the bullshit. It's like, how do you want to play this? Because like, I don't even want to have a conversation with you because I just know, you know what I mean? Like you're not genuine, you're not true, because you can feel it, you can sense it, and you can, I don't know, you can easily
You're
tell.
fed by it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the whole energy Pisces thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I feed off good energy and vibes. Give me more.
Not just that. It's this thing of like, every time I've walked away from a conversation with you, I've felt inspired. I felt like, first of all, I felt heard. And second of all, I felt that I listened. And by listening to you, I'm enriched. I'm encouraged. I'm excited about what the world has to offer me because I did something right that allowed me to have relationships with good humans. And you're one of those people in my life. And that for me is a gift, because with everything that can get taken away from you, authentic connection is not one of them.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're in the same sentiment and same boat with that. And it's a true appreciation. I don't know where, talking about coffee, my business would be without you and your true, genuine concern for the development of what we're trying to achieve with perspective. So, and just meeting a fucking genuine human being, it's just one of those like, hey, it's like, it's the sprinkle on the top that is kind of like, wow. And I think it's hard, like it's not significantly hard, but it's hard to find good, genuine, true human beings around sometimes, because we're in a world where, you know, social media can control one's mind. We're in a world where people aren't necessarily being themselves. They're being who they think they should be instead of being who they actually are.
That's
and
it
takes a while, right? And so it takes when you find people that are like, I don't give a, this is who I am. And it kind of, I don't know, it's a warm thing. And I've been lucky my whole entire life, just the same, to be able to meet different individuals from different countries, to just be able to connect with individuals. And that's kind of like, I don't know, that's my one gift. If anybody tells you, like, I'm the guy that will be able to connect with another human being anywhere on this globe, to have a great conversation and or just be able to take down all the, I don't know, fears, anxiety or whatever. I can truly, genuinely, I just want to understand people and talk to people. I don't really necessarily have to, I don't want to convey my perspective or anything so much. I really want to understand. And I think that's the genuine thing that, you know, I'm learning from you. It's like, oh, I'm just learning. I'm here to learn. And when you speak, it's like, oh, okay, I could do this all day. Like, she's got some really good stories. She's got some real good information to share. And then she's a genuine fucking human being. Oh
Yeah.
my God, where do they do these at? Like,
You know, the thing that you show up with is, and I guess all people like us, it's, you know, you just show up as you. You don't show up as you plus an agenda.
Mhm.
You don't show up as you plus this is what I want from you. It's just cool.
Mm-hmm. That's all I got.
That's it. And you know, me, that's all I got.
You know?
It's it was often why you know, when I was in the music industry, because I wasn't prepared to play the games, because I wasn't prepared to, you know, either open my legs or get down on my knees or, you know, start being a catty little bitch or all that kind of stuff, because because I didn't have addictions. I didn't fit well into that world. And that's not just me thinking that. I was explicitly told that by people who wanted to sign me in record deals, that would say to me, yeah, no. I would do things that were far too grown up. So I'd get approached. Every major label approached me. And so we'd sit for the meeting, or we'd exchange the initial kind of courting through emails and whatever. And I'd say, well, listen, these are my deal breakers. Number one, I need an independent auditor to go through my books that you have about the money that you spend on elevating my career. And it usually, the conversation stops after that.
Interesting.
Yeah. The second thing that was my deal breaker was that, you know, I want to be able to have a say on what gets spent, what money gets spent on, because I don't need the fancy hotels. I don't need any of that stuff. I want to make sure that we run a tight ship and it's an efficient ship, and I don't need any cocaine or anything like that. So I don't need any of that appearing on my budget.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are inviting to any of my showcases and providing bowls of cocaine for them.
Yeah.
But I don't do any blow, so I don't want to be paying for any of it.
Yeah.
And you can see why very quickly I become very non-attractive to the worlds that is. And all I had to offer was just me straight up. And I learned pretty quickly that I guess it was a good stomping ground to realize, like, oh, the business world works very differently than what I thought. I thought that if you just get really good at what you do and you work really hard and you treat people well, that you'll get ahead. And I learned, like, stop being such an idealistic bitch, get your head out of the clouds, and start figuring out if you're able to do the things that are required to get you to the heights that you want to get to. Because if you're not prepared to suck people's dick on demand, and if you're not prepared to cheat people, you need to figure out an alternative here. And I realized that I don't have what it takes to do that. Much like I don't have what it takes to be the kind of multi-millionaire that I know I could be with the products that I have, if I was prepared to engage in the fuckery that's required to make it happen.
Understood.
And
but you're better off for it, though, you know, because in my perspective of it all is that even though I've learned money, right? So I've been working with billions of dollars every year for the last 10 years. So money is just money. It doesn't change. It helps, but it doesn't create like the things and the joy that you would want in life. And
that I have.
I've got, yes, like, and it's not worth, you know what I mean? It's like, for an extra 1 million this year, would you, I don't know, give your soul away by doing X, Y, and Z? Or would you look back on this 10 years from your career and being like, shit, I should have never done this? Or are you true to yourself and just going to be like, I'm okay? for that extra little. Gary Vee is one of the guys I watch
I'm sorry about
that. From time to time. But he's one of those guys that he uses profanity a lot in his.
I can't relate to that at all. What are you talking
about? And he stated one time before that he had an opportunity to make X amount of dollars on a particular speak event, and he said, "Fuck no." He said, because they said, "All we need you to do is clean up the language and don't curse." And he said, "Well, that's not who I am." So he turned that down. And so that was just nuances, and you can learn from everybody somehow.
Absolutely. No. Listen, I don't have a problem with, I think that he is an inspired human. I think he's an inspiring human. The unfortunate thing about what he does is I think that it can be a little manipulative in the way that he yields his audience. Other than that, he's got it right. It's just that I look at people's audiences as a way of judging the quality of that ecosystem. And when you look at a lot of the audience of the people who follow Gary Vee, I call them, a lot of them are pretend entrepreneurs. They're people who think that because they've decided to launch a product once, they're now an entrepreneur. And from the conversations that, we've been having for Perspective Roasters, and from you will have heard on my podcast, this idea of entrepreneur and being a business owner takes a long journey of hardship. So, I remember I walked into a cafe and I sat down, and on the table next to me, there was 2 guys and 4 bottles of Elixir. For anyone who's listening that doesn't know what that is, that's one of my companies, Elixir Specialty Coffee. And they were sitting there, and they had drunk 2 bottles each. And, these are the moments you can't pay for as an entrepreneur. You have to earn those moments where you walk in and see someone drinking your product that you don't know. Anyway, they got up, and one of them came back and said, "Oh, I forgot my Elixir bottles." And he came back and grabbed his bottles. And this is a bottle for anyone who hasn't seen it. And we're well known for how beautiful the bottles are and how gorgeous it looks when it's filled. And, we get the labels printed onto the bottles so that people can repurpose it without having to throw away any plastic, put a ton of work into this. So when he came back to grab the bottles, I was really curious because we had hoped that people would repurpose them.
Oh, yeah. And I do.
Go ahead. You're about due for some more too. I should send you some more of this Costa Rica and Panama.
I'll buy some. I saw that sale you had. I just was in a crunch. It was like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Still on.
All right, cool.
And so I said to him, "Excuse me, what do you do with the bottles?" And he said, "I use them for everything. I've got so many of them at home. They're fantastic." And his friend walked up and he said, "Why do you ask?" And I said, "Actually, I own the company." And he said, "Oh my God, that's amazing." He said, "Your bottles are really beautiful." I'm like, "Thanks. We've put a lot of effort into them." He said, I'd keep mine, but I want to pull the labels off and you don't let me do that. I said, "Well, that will kind of defy the point because we want the branding to move with you." He says, Gary Vee says that, yeah. And
go ahead. I'm sorry. I want to hear what Gary Vee said.
He said, Gary Vee says that you should give your customers what they want, not what you want. And I said to him, "Well, have you built a business before?" And he said to me, "Well, I'm an entrepreneur." I said, "Answer the question. Have you built a business before?" And he said, "Well, I'm about to start. I follow Gary Vee. I'm doing everything that he says." And Gary Vee says, and I said, "Listen, mate, I promise you that once you've built your first business, you won't throw shade on any business owner about fucking anything. Because you will have so much respect for anyone that managed to get a product to market, because you will know the pain that is required just to get a product to market."
Yeah, as I'm starting to learn.
Yeah.
I do believe he might have had a bad interpretation. I think Gary Vee looks at his feedback from his following, and he listens to what they say. But I think that's Gary Vee himself, and he says, from my understanding, run your business how to, do what you want to do. But he does it based on his content that his viewers watch. So he goes back into those viewers and he looks at what there says to get more popular. Well, to see where the movement is, and he'll take that and run with it, because he'll say, "Oh, people seem to be this. Well, let's throw something out that way." I think that's an interpretation thing, but again, that poor gent, I hope he has been successful. I hope he's learning the struggles of entrepreneurship. I hope he's learning the financial struggles. He's learning the communication and what not to say when you meet somebody that's an entrepreneur, that's a business owner. Like,
his friend was so sweet. He turned around and he said, "Shut the fuck up, mate. You don't know." He didn't say mate. He said, "Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about." And he just looked at me and said, "Thank you for everything that you do. This is the only way I want to drink coffee for the rest of my life." I mean,
that's monumental. That's deep.
Yeah. Look, you can't pay for that. There's nothing.
Not at all.
That's the payback for the blood, sweat, and tears that you get from building something. Because there's so many obstacles that get put in your way by people who.
Speak on it. Go ahead. Point them out.
That's a podcast happening on a different podcast in a few weeks.
I got you.
Oh, it's just, people who, going back to exactly what we were talking about, these people who, because of their inherent entitlement, don't need to think about the way that their actions affect you.
It's big. That's a big one. That's probably the biggest one we probably had to see this year, is just the subconscious, right? The conscious and the subconsciousness, to be able to fully see like your lack thereof. I don't think America has had that opportunity, because we've been so boisterous over the world. And Americans in their own particular places, they're like, well, I'm American, so there's too much I could talk to on that particular subject matter. But I don't think all Americans have had the opportunity to fully sit back and look at, their consciously, like what they have, how much more they have than others, and then perspective. And I think that's one of the key reasons why we named the business Perspective Roasters, is because if you're not ever trying to understand another person's perspective, then what are you doing? Like, how do you I grew up in a small town, very small town, and half the people in the town are my cousins. And
I'm Syrian, bro. I can relate to that in such a big way.
So everybody's my cousins. And so like everybody who's stuck in that town, and I won't say stuck, but that town creates a perspective of certain things. And if you never get outside of that town, you never really get a full perspective of outside of that town. And I'm telling Delaware is like the third smallest state? It's the first state, but it's a very small state. It's literally, you can drive through the state in an hour and a half, 2 hours, hour and a half if you're speeding, you know what I mean? From top to bottom, and from left to right, maybe an hour. It's a small state, but it's one of those, once you get there, you might be stuck on that peninsula, because it is a peninsula. You might be stuck there with that particular thought. And if you never really leave, sometimes you really don't get a true understanding of another's perspective. And that's the problem that America has, because we have these pockets and areas where people just like, well, no, this is what I know. I grew up in this truck plant and yada, 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 and this is what we do, and this is America, and this is how it should be, and yada, yada, yada. And people don't really understand, like, well, there's different perspectives out there. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we're having in this country, is that people never even thought about somebody else. You never even thought about what a Black person might have gone through, because you never, why would you? You know,
And a
why would you?
perspective isn't a weapon.
Mm-mm.
Like this is the challenging thing for somebody like me. I've got to say,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that people almost view, if somebody wants to share their perspective with them, it's almost as though they're holding up a gun to them. You know, it's this idea of, I'm not going to allow that to penetrate my consciousness because it might hurt me.
Mm.
But it's just a perspective. You don't have to do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this a lot with religiosity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and not just here, religiosity in my own family.
Mm-hmm.
Religiosity in Australia isn't really a big thing, except when you looking at different cultural groups, like the Arab groups in Australia, there is a huge thing about religiosity because the Muslims are fighting with the non-Muslims. I guess that's also the Australian experience after 9/11 as well. It's like we had the big riots, the Cronulla riots, where it became dangerous, literally, to ride the train if you were an Arab.
Mm.
The graffiti on the train was like, fuck Allah. And they were driving down. I'll never forget this. My ex-husband happened to be in one part of Sydney. And he said, you won't believe what I'm seeing. There was processions going down the middle of this kind of Arab area of you call them pickups here, but we call them utes. Utes.
I drive a ute. I have a ute.
Of course you do. but there was a procession of utes down Brighton Les Sands waving Schwartz stickers.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's fucking Sydney.
Wow. Interesting.
They wanted us to know that that's the only race that exists, right? Because Muslims were not welcome. But going back to what I was saying about the religiosity here in America, if you want to penetrate somebody's thinking about politics and you use something as divisive as abortion, even the consideration of the concept of being pro-choice is seen as an attack or an assault on somebody's religiosity, because the Bible says
interpretation.
And it's like, you won't even hear it. You won't even consider it. You won't even engage in conversation. The Bible says, okay.
I'm trying to figure out, have we always been like that? Like, has the world always been my clan versus your clan? Like, my religion versus your religion? And there's been wars fought over that, right?
Right.
But in this day and age...
Well, I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with my cousin in Syria, and, you know, there's some tensions in my family, right, between me and my family. And I told, you know, he was asking me why those tensions exist. And I said to him, well, it's because I've left our religion. I'm no longer any religion, and I've left being a Catholic. I had my local priest contact the Vatican and have me removed from the registry in the Catholic Church.
That's big.
Yeah. The conversation with my priest, he's like, look, it's going back about 10 years ago. And I said, I want to be removed from the registry. And he said, well, if you're not a Catholic anymore, you just decide you don't want to be a Catholic. And I said, no. I had to go through a ceremony to officially become a Catholic. That number that you're preaching the sky of how many Catholics there are, that needs to go down by one. And so the way that you get that done is you have to write a letter to the Vatican, and they attach a certificate to your baptism certificate.
Interesting.
Once it comes back, and they deem that you are no longer, your baptism has been rescinded. So I had that done.
Wow.
Right. And my cousin's response was, it was shameful when you got divorced, but this is much, much worse. Not being a part of this religion is much, much worse culturally to us than you getting divorced. And that really, and now he's 20 years younger than me.
Mm.
So this wasn't somebody who was old school or anything like that. He's a millennial.
Mm.
And it gives you this kind of perspective of it's tribal. It's not just a spiritual thing. Our religion isn't, going to your point, like, has this always been a thing? I think it has, because people have their religion as a part of their identity and use it as a way to define. They redline. They use it to redline, right?
Mm. So this is why, well, for me personally, I didn't grow up in a religious household.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been my detriment when I was younger, because I was damn sure going to hell. Everybody and their mama told me I was going to hell. Like when I was in, football practice, like, hey, you don't go to church? You know what I mean? Oh, shit. Like every girl I dated back in the day was just like, oh, God, you don't go to church? Let's think twice about this guy.
Yeah.
And then, but it's become one of my superpowers as I got older, because I don't care what your religion is. My best friend is Muslim, and my girlfriend is Christian. And it's one of those things where I'm not going to say I don't care, but I don't really have concerns about your religion. I have more concerns about who you are as a human being.
How you treat people.
And that in itself is what I always thought, which I always hated about religion, is because people already had their perspective about me before they even had a perspective about me. There's like, oh, well, he's going to hell. Can't talk to him. Who's next?
Yeah,
like it's one of those, like, it's kind of one of those judgment type things. And supposedly, if you follow some of these religions, it's like you're not supposed to judge. The only person that could judge is the higher one. So why is everybody here judging?
The hypocrisy is what gets me.
Yeah, so I'm kind of still glad that I'm not a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person. And what does that mean? It's up to your interpretation, whatever that means. I believe in a higher being, but I also believe in other things. I'm a big fan of going to Thailand. I'm a Buddhist on the low. I'm a eat, pray, sleep, meditation type of guy in the morning. You know what I mean? I fast daily. So it's one of those things where it's just like, I don't know. I just do what makes my body feel good. And I pray from time to time, and I've had a great life. I've had many troubles. I've had many things, but I've been always able to see and meet genuine great people without a religion needing to do that or control that, or people judge me for it as I've gotten older. You know what I mean? I think when I was younger, it was definitely a defying thing of like, oh God, you don't go to church? Well, what do you do then? Are you Muslim? I'm like, how ignorant.
I get that too.
I couldn't, it wasn't until like I got older that traveling, I can have more conversations with individuals. And then I've always pushed politics and religion. I don't even want to talk about it, because if I can understand it, yeah, I'd like to understand your perspective about it. But it's all interpretation, because every Christian I've talked to has a different interpretation about everything when it comes to religion. So it's all interpretation. So I don't know.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's coming on this podcast, and she's fascinating. She's a historical author. Shout out to Nikki. She's a historical author she wanted to be devoted to Jesus and become a nun when she was really young. Okay. Decided not to. And she was very religious when she was younger. But then as she got older, she realized, becoming a historical writer, that there were these other ways of life that worked for her. that offered her things that Christianity couldn't.
Mm.
And it was a form of paganism.
Mm.
And so she realized that being 100% Christian wasn't working for her, and so she tried that, and then she tried being 100% pagan.
Mm.
And that didn't work for her either. So she's kind of faith fluid.
Mm.
So she considers herself both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if that doesn't make sense to anybody else, because, you know, the Christians in her life think it's sacrilegious that she includes these kind of Wiccan kind of elements of her life into her spiritual practice. But she doesn't care. This is what she needs.
Yeah.
She, you know, there are fundamental things she doesn't agree with the church about, you know, the idea of, you know, the usual things. She's pro-choice. She's pro-gay marriage, all of those kinds of things. And she doesn't think that the church should impinge on that. And whereas the Wiccan culture is very into natural flow of forces, you know, and that works for her. And the fact that we do red line around the people who agree with us versus the people who don't agree with us when it comes to these kinds of things, I think is a big contributing factor to how we've ended up here in 2020.
So it's a factor, that's for sure. I think there's too many crazy factors that happen. You know what I mean? COVID being one of the most, it's been something that was already seen, but I can't necessarily say that. Again, I don't like doing politics, but I don't know. We have a particular person in office that it's just sad, you know what I mean? We're destroying relationships around the world, and you know, we're a first world country, whatever the hell that means. And I had a discussion about that. I don't think we're really a first world country. We're
well,
so
you and I
fucked up.
talked about it, right?
Yeah.
Like I said to you, the way I define America is a rich third world country.
Yeah. It's because that whole America's the greatest country in the world is asinine. It's not really. It can't be true. You know what I mean? We are a great country, but
absolutely,
we have so many fucking faults that there's no way you can easily just raise your hand and just say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Because if you've been black and you've been here, then you know damn well that is not the case.
well,
now,
and also, like, as an expat that lives here and has been living here for 5 years, when people say to me, like, you know, how are you finding living in America? This is Americans that say this to me, and I'm like, well, you know, it's not like I came from Australia to here. I didn't come from Rwanda to here. You know, where the social injustice in Rwanda is so debilitating that the people are oppressed in ways that, you know, I had to escape from. I'm not a refugee here. I came from Australia, where the standard and quality of life is extremely high. And so to come here and experience America, I arrived here the year that Trump got nominated.
Oh shit.
Now, I'd lived here before
you
for a
missed
couple of
some
years.
good shit then.
No, see,
you missed some of those Obama days.
No. I was living here the year that Obama got elected, right?
Okay, all right.
So I lived here for 2 years then, and then I lived here for 2 years, 2010, no, 2011 and 2012. And so I experienced that. And then when I moved here, at the year that, like, when I moved here, Trump hadn't even got nominated. And people would say, oh, you're looking forward to like starting the journey here? And I'm like, well, like, I'm a little concerned about this whole Trump thing, because it kind of feels like he's going to win the election. They're like, stop being so stupid. He hasn't even been nominated. They'll veto it. He'll never even get the nomination.
Yeah.
I would speak to other expats and they're like, oh, Trump's absolutely going to get in. I'm like, how come we're the only ones that can see this?
Oh, wow.
Americans don't think it's even possible.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, not, there's some Americans that knew it was possible. I was in Kabul, Afghanistan, and I was like, watching the news. I was like, this is not going to happen, is it? I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is happening.
This is going to be. I will never forget the night that he got in.
Yeah.
It felt like, people say that the world changed at 9/11. I agree. But this changed it more. And I remember saying to a friend who, shout out to Steve Chang. Steve and I and a couple of his employees, we were out having cigars that night. We had gone for a meal, we were having cigars in a bar, and we're watching this election. And, you know, Steve's Korean American. And he was explaining a lot of what was going on and why this is not a good thing for America and diversity, et cetera, et cetera. And I said to him, like, I don't know why, Steve, that I didn't pick the differences between the Australian and the American culture when I lived here before as much as I have now. And he said, no, this is a different country now. Our culture's changed now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so much going on right now that we've had to adapt. But man, when you talk about the stock market that's on the verge of a second crash, when you talk about, you know, the global impact that America is now, I mean, international relationships that have been devastated. I mean, there's some people, well, I don't want to get too far into it, but there's some folks that actually was like, Trump is a great businessman. And people are like, are you serious? I'm like, are you serious? Have you done the research on like the businesses that he's owned, like, and his wealth and where it comes from? But
this is where it comes back to like that confirmation bias, right? Like people need to present the set of data that they have that proves the argument that they want to present. It doesn't matter whether it's factual or not.
Yeah.
It's that they've been able to twist it so that it shows their opinion. And I'm saying to...
But so where do we go from there? So we got two different extremes, right? We got left and right. And the left and right are even getting pushed further and further at this day and moment, at this time, after yesterday. You got left and right even getting pushed even further. And we're seeing each other for, you know, left or right, choose. Where do we go from there? Because now it's like when we talk about the unrest going on in America right now, North America, that is, well, America in general. Because we can go on down to Brazil and
that shit's been going on for a long time.
But where do we go from here? And it's not like another a change. Just imagine, you know, 45 stays, or even imagine if we get a new Biden in office. I don't know what drastic changes are going to happen right now, because we're on the verge of like that whole beyond civil war, uneasy unrest. Like we're in a really crazy state right now, let alone COVID's about to, well, from my opinion, flu season's on the way. So
it's about it. Yeah, I agree with you. It's about to actually start taking off in my opinion. It's a really important question that you just asked, like where to from here. And nobody's got a crystal ball, but you know, often in a lot of the coaching work that I do, when there's obvious kind of polarities happening in a workplace or in a business leadership situation, and they're like, we just can't seem to find a resolution. In those situations, I think that the healthiest thing that you can do is let it break down and put both parties in a room and find a way to ignite the situation so that they can start being real with each other. Because it's all this passive aggressive bullshit that is the most divisive. It's all this passive aggressive bullshit that has kept some people in their corners of inherent entitlement. And in those situations, what you start to find is once you allow something, the pressure cooker, to start easing, and it's either explosive release of pressure or a gradual release of pressure, depending on how the room decides to organize itself and how long it takes someone to participate in engaging. What ends up happening is it's not going to forever maintain the peak of that pressure, because just like with roasting, you know, the rate of rise will eventually start to slow down. People get exhausted. People start to realize that the outcome of this isn't really getting us anywhere. Now I'm just shouting because I'm shouting. And before I really needed to be heard, but now I've realized I'm not actually getting heard. And there are times when conflict is necessary. There is so much repressed trauma in this country.
It's drastic.
And it is, for lack of a better term, it is unfair that people haven't been allowed to express it. And we're starting to see that be expressed. You know, I learned something very interesting about Black history today. Did you know that malaria was brought over here by, I bet you do know this, malaria was brought over here by, with slavery, right? But segregation happened before the Black culture, well, Black oppression and slave ownership was a thing here. They were using other indentured servitude by Europeans. So they would bring their own maids over and things like that. When they started bringing slaves over here, though, malaria traveled with them. But the reason it traveled with them was because they had a natural immunity to it. Particularly the children are reservoirs for malaria. So they can carry it and not express it. And because of sickle cell, what happens is the Black community that they brought over were all naturally immune to it, which heightened their level of servitude in an even more oppressive way, because the people who were the previous slaves could no longer do their work because they were dying. It killed 90% of the population here in America. And so because Black slaves couldn't die from this disease, they were exploited even further. While everyone was dying around them, they weaponized the fact that they had this immunity and made them work even harder, because that's the only workforce they could depend on. It's so fucked up on so many levels.
Yeah.
And you look at this history, like it's trauma piled on top of trauma, piled on top of trauma, on top of trauma. And you think, listen, there are some forms of conflict that need to happen in order for us to process the trapped trauma. And I don't know that there's any, people talk about reparations. Like, what fucking number can you put on it? There isn't one. What do you do? Give people tax-free for 10 years. Yeah, but what about the kids that come after that don't get to benefit from that, who are here as direct descendants of slaves? Like, there's no kinds of reparations that really do make sense.
It can't be. There can't be. You couldn't put a dollar amount on it at all. I know some people that are advocates for reparations, but I don't think that's something as a number that can ever be agreed upon, ever.
That's going to escalate a civil war. If that happens, that will escalate a civil war.
I doubt that'll never happen. Not in my lifetime. Reparations?
No, fuck no. No, especially not with what's happened. No. But it's one of those things whereby you look at it now and you think, perhaps this is one of those moments where we have to allow whatever's going to happen to happen. People deserve the right after trying to speak peacefully, nothing happens. Writing letters, nothing happens. Creating documentaries and movies and all that kind of shit. There are so many things in your way. Like I saw Amazon have now got a section on Amazon Prime Video, black movies. I'm like, this is great. But after what? After what? And if that seems to be the only fucking thing that's going to get people to listen, perhaps we should just allow it to happen.
It's going to, my personal opinion, I think it's not going to be a decision. It's going to be, it's this or that eventually. I truly believe that in this moment, in this time, there's too many that are just fed up, tired at this point in time. There is no, like, there's no more, I adamantly advocate for voting and changing the system, but I do think that's going to take a period of time to even get to that. Yeah. You know what I mean? We have to rewrite everything, in my opinion. You have to rewrite the legal system. You have to get into the legislative system. You have to write another amendment. Like, I don't know what the hell has to be done, but there's a lot. Bullshit. It's a lot of work that's going to have to be done, but I don't think it's going to be done just like that. And I think there is going to be, as we've seen on television right now, I think there's black folks that are pretty much done. We're pretty much tapped out. Yeah. We're pretty much tapped out. Like we've done the bending, we've done the peacefulness, and I'm not saying that they're going to be like just violent. What I'm saying is that violence is going to be met with violence, and we've seen it, and we're seeing it. And I think at this point in time, it's going to be a severe clash. I mean, we're seeing it day in and day out now, where protesters, and again, they're protesters of all color are out there, and still there's issues happening. People, black people were getting shot. There's a 17-year-old boy out with an automatic assault rifle at a fucking, right. And just like, oh, he's out there policing the streets. Like stuff that black people, really first of all, black people can never get away with that, carrying a rifle out there. I'm not even going to that story. I'm just saying black people are tired. And I think the good thing is that black people will never give up. We've got the courage that, like, we were, our parents have already kind of told us like what to expect. Some of us didn't see it until we got older. And now we're starting to see it. But I think this new generation, this Gen Z, that don't have jobs right now because there are in certain particular areas they're not, and they were promised like, hey, it's equality, life is good, yada yada, and now they're just seeing like there's no jobs, there's nothing to do, there's a pandemic hitting, and now the fact that like you're literally killing black people, and now it's videotaped. There's a whole thing about the revolution will be televised. It actually is being televised right now. Yeah. It's literally, we're seeing the assassination of black men and women. And I promise you, it's not going to be the sit downs anymore. I think there's going to be violence met with violence at this point in time, which again is that whole thing that might be needed at this point in time, because I don't know. I mean, I'm not a person for violence. I'm don't own a gun right now. I don't, what I mean? I just don't want to be around a lot of that, but this is America. Literally, like this is what it is. And at this point in time, I'm advocating for anybody to, protect themselves, do what they need to do. But it's just, it's just so sad. It's just 2020 and Black Americans still don't have equality in so many avenues. But I'm glad the awakening is here. People are really starting to notice. There's some companies that give a fuck, and there's some companies that are like, it's all right. I think the Wells Fargo CEO or president said, oh, we have a problem with Black pool. We can't find Black talent, which is bullshit.
Shit.
You know what I mean? I went to HBCU where we have so many.
Will you tell people what HBCU is? Because I didn't know what it was until you told me.
Oh, it's a historically Black college or university, and started back in times where there was a division between Black and white. We were segregated, and for Blacks to get education, we had to go to our schools. So the state funded a portion. The university would get the money. The state institution, and for many institutions, it's still that way. But it's a place for Black Americans to be in a conducive environment to learn and actually have teachers and professors looking out for their benefit.
Right.
Because if you go to a PWI, predominantly white institution, I'm not saying there's people not out there looking out for you, but in this day and age, you might be struggling in class. That subconscious bias is there.
It's real as fuck.
And it's not really noticed. Again, this year, I mean, I can count on my hands the amount of my white friends, associates that have reached out who actually wanted to have a conversation about the subject matter, about what's going on. And it's just interesting. But I'm just saying that the HBCUs are a place where Black Americans can go, get a great education, thrive, as in there are people around them like them. That's where I met my business partner, Mr. Reggie Black.
Shout out to Mr. Reggie Black.
I love that dude to death. And I met so many other great people. Yeah, I mean, you just meet so many other great people from different diasporas, and then that's when you really can talk culture. Like I went to Delaware State, and we had people from New York, New Jersey, Philly, DC, Maryland, Virginia, down south, like Atlanta, Florida. Like we've had individuals from Texas that everybody has a different accent. And it's when you really get to see like the mixing pot of Black folks, like, oh God, like, okay, he's brown, super black, light, bright white, colorful, beautiful. Look at the glow that man or that woman has. Like you just really get to see the true beauty of the beauty in melanin, right?
Yeah.
And for that, but then you get to really start to see like, okay, everybody's here for, just like any other college institution, most of the people are here to try to get an education. Most people, these are first time people who ever been able to go to school. These are first generation people. When I went to school, and this wasn't too long ago, I mean, well, shit, it's almost 20 years ago now, but
right? It's a bit of a wake up call when you're like, when did I do my degree?
It's almost 20 years ago, but it's a great environment to create. And it's a great environment to thrive and then get thrust out into the world. So I've met so many of my professionals that went to Delaware State who went to, Lockheed Martin or Goldman Sachs or all these other institutions that, we were challenging, we were going against each other for like who had the best grade and yada, yada, yada. Like it was really that great of an environment to learn and try to learn more. And, I got to meet Warren Buffett when I was, my sophomore, junior year. Like it's just so much that we've been able to do in these institutions and the great things that come out of it. Like if you ever do like a Google search of some of the individuals that came out of these HBCU universities, it's astounding. Like some of the things that the inventions, the leaders, it's astounding how many individuals have gone to HBCUs and where they are now, or those that have passed in our history and what they have been able to accomplish since they've been to HBCU. So that's what HBCUs to me.
But the talent pool's there. It's the lack of desire.
Where's the reach?
Just look for it. It's not hard to find people that are qualified.
where do you go to these schools? Because you're talking about a big bank, and I look at government organizations too. What schools do you go to? Do you go to the
To
HBCUs? Because
hire, yeah.
you understand a lot of Black Americans, not all, but there's a huge percentage of Black Americans who still go to these HBCU universities. Why aren't you going there? Because the talent is there. And affordability, we couldn't necessarily afford the universities. University of Delaware, back when I was going to school, it was, I would say percentage wise, it was probably about 45% more a year. Luckily, I got an academic scholarship, and I never even saw how much it cost.
Of course you did.
I got lucky. So, but I had a scholarship, and so I never really saw the cost factor. But it's a cost factor. So that's why a lot of people go to community colleges. But it's to get education, and that's why HBCUs were formed. You got fraternities, sororities, all those other great things that are formed at these HBCU universities and institutions to create excellence.
You know, you were saying before, like, where do we go from here? And I think that something that I'm particularly passionate about is, I was aware that as somebody who wants to be a part of a solution, tackling it on a mass level is far beyond my reach. But using what I've built to, I consider myself a path clearer. You know, my job is to clear a path for people who are becoming going to be industry giants like you and Reggie with Perspective Roasters. And it has been so encouraging and inspiring to watch, with just by putting the right people in your path, you guys starting to cultivate what I think is going to be the most interesting coffee roasting brand in the world.
We're trying.
And I guess helping people build, to use Jay-Z's words, a legacy is kind of the only way that we can right now affect a positive change that's going to resonate into the future. And I see people like you and like Reggie doing things like Perspective Roasters and saying, well, we find ourselves in a moment in time. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to use it to continue to do hard shit. We're all big fans of doing hard shit.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue finding a way not to let this beat us down and to feed our integrity rather than diminish it.
We have our moments, we're going to have our moments of like where we're beat up. And I think after a few videos I watched a few months ago, I was literally not able to work successfully. I had to pull out of a few projects at work. I literally, we had the one conversation with my job where the bosses said, all right, let's have a conversation. And we didn't even know the conversation was about to happen, and it happened, and we were able to hear a little bit. And I had to get off the call because I was crying, because of what I saw. And you know what I mean? And the fear that you feel as a Black man to be able to, go to the store without, possibly getting killed, that fear is still there. But it was a moment. And now it's it's still there, but you can have that moment, and we have to move forward. And Black people have always had to move forward, but we're trying to create in this moment. We're not going to let these moments keep us down, because our ancestors would be so happy with where we are. And we're going to do them justice by demanding more to even get better, to just get equality. You know what I mean? That's just what we're going to try to get, and we're not going to stop until we get that. So I'm about to. Oh no, I'm in the fight until my end.
The moment that really pierced me right here in the middle of my brain was when I was watching some protests, and I saw an old woman with a cane she had been walking in protests for hours.
Mm.
And she was yelling out, "No justice, no peace." And somebody said to her, "Why are you protesting?"
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Because I'm tired. I can't even walk and I'm doing this. I'm just tired. You all have had plenty of time to give us the justice that we deserved, but you haven't. So now we ain't going to give you no peace."
Plan B. We
And
gave you, we gave you plan A. We gave you plan A for a long time.
It's just when, for me, I guess I have a real affinity for elders. It's part of the cultural. That's a very similar thing with the Black culture and the Arab culture. Is our elders are very important to us,
Mm-hmm.
and when you see the elders in a community expressing anger as opposed to sitting still and in their wisdom, that's when you know this has now gone too far. This is where if their lead is, "We're going to fight," if the elders in a community are saying this, "We're going to fight," this shit's gone real.
It's every, and I hate this, well, I'm not going to say hate to say this, it's every person of color and person not of color's responsibility to fight for equality. It's everyone's responsibility. And when you are a Black American, whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're middle-aged, whether, you know, you've been incarcerated, whether whether you're successful in your eyes of success, it's your responsibility to keep pushing for equality in this country. And that is why you'll see you'll see kids, you'll see every diaspora of color. It is our responsibility. It is why it's everyone's responsibility, but it's also responsibility of the Hispanic community, the Asian community, whether it be Filipino, Korean, Thai, whatever. It's everybody's responsibility to push equality. But for Black Americans right now, every one of us, it's our responsibility to push back. Yeah. Every one of us.
I wrote this essay. It's up on the Alexa Specialty Coffee website about where we sit on the idea of oppression and racism and whatnot, and why this is really important to me that we all partake in what's happening now. It's because while this is the Black community who we're fighting to dismantle the oppression that has held them down. Oppression is oppression, and their win is all of our win. We're fighting the idea of oppression, but more so what we're fighting is against this sense of inherent entitlement. Because I feel what the entitled elite are concerned about is what happens if they have to compete in a world where they're no longer protected with their inherent entitlement. Because let me tell you, motherfuckers, as a woman who has pushed up against, and you know a lot of my stories, but as a woman who's had to push up against like the oppression that has been put in front of me from people who just didn't want to see me succeed and would go out of their way, whether to deliberately or passively kind of try and fuck up my momentum. I have built up a level of grit and resilience that could challenge some serious levels of grit and resilience. And so when those people no longer have their inherent entitlement to separate them up from me, if we have to compete on an even playing field, I'm going to outrun them just based on grit and resilience.
Well, don't you think that's probably why some of the issues we're having?
Exactly, that's the core of the issues.
There's that fear, and there's fear and control, and those are the two words I will say that are probably the most prominent words I can use when it comes to describing half the shit that's going on right now. It's a fear, and it's a want to control. Yeah. And I use that for police. I use that for people in power. It's a fear, so therefore we have to control. And so now, again, you level the playing fields, and you really see that's the fear. That's the fear.
I got to tell you, I'm excited. I'm excited for what's coming, but I'm also excited for what comes after what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I'm like, sometimes you've just got to let people have it out.
Yeah.
And then express the repressed trauma so that we can come to what's next. We're never getting to equality until what's owed is at least expressed, because it can't be paid. It needs to be addressed. It can't be paid.
Mm-hmm.
No one can repay the Black community for what was taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
But it does need to be expressed. It does need to be heard. And we do need to make this even so that we can see what the world looks like when there's equality for the Black community, when there's equality for women, when there's equality for all the people who have been oppressed. And let's just see what happens when that is our new reality.
I wish I could see that reality.
I think we will, Sekou. I genuinely feel like we're coming to a time when the awakening is, I mean, dare I say, people like you and I, with the experience that we had, we are part of the elders of those who are going to inform the Gen Zs. They are, we're seeing it. I'm seeing it in my industry. You're seeing it with the people around you. You know, they're coming to us to say, I'm angry. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not only telling them, you know, you got to do what's right for you, but we're also saying, but think about what comes after that and make sure you're planning for the whole journey, not just the next, 25 minutes.
Yeah. And I think that will be a difficulty for some of the younger generation, but I think they're engulfed in this right now. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
you got to think about these Gen Z. They are engulfed in this. They don't have a choice but to digest. You understand, this generation has been tied to the internet since they were born,
birth.
kind of, sort of. Yeah. And so they have to deal with more shit, I would say, mentally than we've had to, because we've already, we heard the stories of, Black men getting shot, Black men getting, going to jail and all the other things like that. We saw Rodney King back in the day, but we didn't see it. Unless you were in particular communities, you didn't see it every day. You saw it, but now when you're seeing it on video, in your face,
live,
day in, day out, people just being murdered. It's that generation is experiencing a mental trauma that I don't even think, you know what I mean? Like, I know the older generation, we maybe can be like, well, we've seen it. Our expectation was here. We already know, when there's a police stop, hey, yes, sir, yada, yada, yada.
We've got to conform and comply, right?
A younger generation might be like, what do you want? Why are you pulling me over? And that is something, again, it's tough, because I think the one time I cried about all the situations that were coming about is that I don't have kids, but I do want to have kids eventually. And I have a fear, or not a fear. It's going to be a sad story when I have to tell my kids, you're different and you can't do these things. Like my dad had to tell me, and I never believed it. You know what I mean? I was like, my dad was like, yeah, he was crazy. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean I don't have any, like, some white friends at school? What do you mean that boy over there is not your friend? What do you mean, like, you can't do these certain things growing up? You know what I mean? Like, every Black man or woman have had to tell their kids. Yeah, the story has had to be told. And I'm like, shit, I just want to have a child and tell them, like, they're beautiful, they're equal, they're all these things, and that they can go out this world, do some things, and not have repercussions just because of the color of their skin. I wanted to tell them that, hey, you can, I don't know, you can go to the, I guess Obama, that was the one thing that some of America hated, is that we saw a Black president. And it was kind of one of those things where that was a true possibility, that you can be one of the highest ranking individual in the US government. And that shit shocked America. And I think that brought out some of the people that are just, the fear factor kicked in. But again, I just want to, I want to raise a child and not necessarily worry about their lives just because of their color of their skin.
Yeah.
That would be a dream.
And I really hope that our generation sees the importance in the leadership we have to present with right now. Everyone who, you know, I'm big on leading yourself first. You know, everybody's a leader. And whether you're leading yourself with an open heart and an open mind into a conversation, or whether you're leading into a council meeting or a town hall meeting or a protest, whatever it is, like we all need to define our leadership right now so that we can get to a place, because I definitely believe that we are going to arrive at a place, whether we want to or not, we are absolutely going to arrive at a place of equality. There's going to be friction to get there. Listen, Gen Z ain't going to let it not happen. I'm not going to let it not happen. You can't be in my sphere unless you are like that. More and more people are saying, if you want to be one of those pieces of shit that need to feel more important than everybody else, then go hang with your folks. You can't be a part of high thinking society. And Gen Z are not going to let it happen anymore. Gen Z have been, you know, infused with this idea from a really young age of acceptance and diversity and gender fluidity and a lot of the stuff that polarize our generation. The best part about this is nobody gives a fuck if Gen X and, you know, older millennials are polarized by this. Too fucking bad.
So, and that's where I hope, you know, there's always hope, because that's all we have to hold on to. Hope, faith, whatever you want to call it, is that you're right. I hope you're right. But I do have my skepticism when it comes to that, because, you know, it's been 400 or 500 years already. Yep. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's like, that's why, you know what I mean? Like, we know expectations, and I hate to be that. My expectations are never here. It's always here, and I always have to bring it. You know, I have to keep it marginal in that sense, and that's why this. Because if I didn't, you know, the Breonna Taylor situation, I wouldn't even be able to do this podcast right now, because I wouldn't have the energy. My soul would have been sucked out of me yesterday, as it partially was, but I had to ignore some things and turn some things off because I still had to go to work. I still had to do what I had to do, you know, for a living, to put function. Food on the table and to keep the roof on my head. But it's
this
just,
is a time when it's not, and I hope you hear the spirit with which this is intended. This is a time when, you know, in those war movies where they have people, like the soldiers have all had their battle and they're all exhausted, right? And then there's a new soldiers come onto the battlefield, and the new soldiers who are refreshed, they realize, like, actually, this is my time to carry you, right? This is my time to lead you through this. I'm going to get you to wherever it is that you need to get to. You've been battling for so long. The Black community has been battling for so long that this is a time when the fight is being joined by so many people who aren't a part of the Black community. And this is the time when it's our job.
Yeah.
To carry you a little bit. Is it our job to put you on our back and say, we got you?
I hear you.
And words are one thing. Words are one thing. Action is another thing.
Yeah, and it's
And
and that's why I say the responsibility is
everyone's.
universal. It's universal. Everybody's responsibility to demand equality. Now,
Yeah.
some people, there's still going to be, we're talking numbers. There's still going to be that percentage that are just like,
Oh, there's selfish people. I've got to tell you, I've met selfish people in the world. I've
mhm,
not met a level of selfishness that I've met here in America.
mm. Oh, that's yeah, we are. We are the definition of selfish sometimes. I mean,
Oh
I think
yeah.
we do have great communities. We do have great
Right.
individuals who are very unselfish. But if you think about why America possibly has the, I don't know, the value of the dollar is what it is. The companies, the New York Stock Exchange possibly is the largest and maybe one of the most
Criminal
biggest.
organizations in the world.
Yeah, it's all through greed and selfishness, right? When you talk about how it's set up in like initial IPOs, like I was trying to get a stock the other day for Snow, and it's a new company that, data, is
Uh-huh.
into all that stuff. And I realized like the initial IPO that was offered before the actual IPO, and it's that all these, it was pushed up, I forgot, like close to, it was in the millions, if not billions of dollars, who was pushed. Warren Buffett got in on it and some other folks that could. And then
Yeah.
they sold it at the IPO of like 250 a share, and they were making their money off of it because they bought it for like pennies on the
Yeah.
penny, not even a dollar, like pennies.
Wow.
And so it's when
The
you
game is
realize like the
rigged.
whole it yeah, it's just rigged, and it's kind of like make the best of what you got while you're here, and like hopefully
That's
we
how
get
America
enough.
runs. It's
Right.
individualistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take what I can. But you come across your path sometimes and you meet some people who do say, let me carry you for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not here to save you. I'm not here to
Mm-hmm.
save anyone. But there are enough of us out there that are like, hey, let me carry you back.
And that's what we're seeing. That's what when you actually see the protests that are going on,
Mm-hmm.
is a large Black population, but there is a huge white population that can't be denied. That is there, and I'm not denying that at all.
Oh yeah.
And there's a huge population of other color and other ethnicities that are there. It is there. We see it, and I can tell you as a
How does that
Black
make you
man,
feel?
I'm appreciative because I realize that like the expectation again was here,
Right.
and when you see that, it makes me feel like there's some others out here that are actually who care about me. You know what I mean? They care about Black people, and that's one of those things that Black people have never really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've truly felt sometimes. I think Black people sometimes we don't even help each other, but let alone someone else reaching across to help. And there are people of other ethnicities that help Black people a lot that go unsung, and it's happened in some of my mentors' careers. It's
Mm.
happened for me. It's happened for others. There are individuals out there, those onesies, twosies, but they're there. But now when you see a huge group and certain places like Kansas has these issues that are going on, and I don't know what the population is versus Black versus white versus Hispanic versus whatever minority that may be out there. There is a large percentage of these groups that are Caucasian, and I have to say, like, okay, I'm
Let's see
I'm
how long you
happy.
can stick with. Yeah.
I'm
Let's see
happy,
where it
but
goes.
I just want. It's interesting to see the dynamic, because when you see a white, a Caucasian being, I don't know, tear gassed in the face or shot with a rubber bullet or
It's a
on the ground
jarring.
with cuffs on, it's like, oh, so now, if you guys are seeing that, like, what does that do to my thought process? Is like, oh, I've seen that on the Black community side. I
Yeah.
haven't really seen that too much on the white community side. I wonder what that does to the Caucasian
Mm.
Americans, if anything. Or are they just like, oh, they were just out there acting stupid anyway, they needed to be arrested? Or, hey, we're being affected now, so that's my son, and if my son believes in this, I'm going to have to, I feel some type of way now. And I'm in a Northern Virginia area where it's very ritzy. People have
Mm-hmm.
some dollars around this area,
Yeah.
but
Reggie said you're a bit bougie.
I got a little bit of it, but I'm cheap though. I'm a finance guy. I'm super
Dude,
frugal.
I'm joking. You've earned the right to live wherever the fuck
I
you
haven't
want.
bought really whatever.
You work
Anyway,
you work hard. You've
I am.
earned.
It's a smidge boozy.
Ah,
Anyway, I've
that flick
seen
was
and
fantastic.
I've seen in the communities that are here that I know are predominantly white, when I see a
Mm,
Black Lives Matter sign in a yard, that gives me so much of a joy
mm,
and kind of a
you're
feeling of
heard.
like, yes, at least there's somebody in this household that possibly truly still believes that Black people should be equal, regardless of, sometimes you might see in a certain community, it's like you're not going to see Black Lives Matter, you're going to see American flag up,
Yeah. Or a
which
Confederate
again,
flag.
what have you, or the police. And again, I support America, I support the police, I just don't support the injustices. And so when
Mm,
I see a Black Lives Matter, or when I see we believe in this household, gays have rights, trans have rights, and we support pro-choice, that shit brings me to like, all right, cool, there's some people in this household that believe from different perspectives that you can have your own fucking perspective from where you are. You can be gay and be, as long as you're fucking happy, that's all that household should care about. You know what I mean? And there's genuine people out there like that. That's what brings me some joy sometimes when I see that. I don't want to see people being arrested in the streets or tear gassed or all these other things, but it gives me a little bit of vigor, I guess you could say, is that when I see individuals that are actually in this with us, kind of, sort of.
yeah.
Can't be us because and can't go through the trauma we're going through, but literally it says, I got you. I'm still gonna cover my face up and all the shit I need to
Yeah.
do, but I'm out there, and I'm walking with you, which means a lot for me as a Black man.
Well, because I don't know when or why, but for some reason, we stopped having living peacefully as the goal.
Mm.
We went in a different, more capitalistic, and I'm not anti-capitalism at all,
Mm-hmm.
but we went in a direction of, instead of needing to live peacefully, we need to live with more stuff.
Mm.
And there seems to be this kind of idea, which I don't know where it came from. Perhaps it's marketing, perhaps it's divisive messaging from leaders. It's this idea of, if somebody has more than, like, it's either I'm going to be the one that gets it or somebody else is going to be the one that gets it. It's like, hey, people, there's plenty to go around.
That is an interesting thing about America, is that you're right. I don't know where it comes from, whether it's a marketing tactic that was used, or I don't know the exact psychology about
Mm-hmm.
it, but there is a sense of, hey, I gotta protect mine, I gotta get mine, and
Yeah.
I'm not sharing, and people don't really realize there's enough to go around for everybody. Like, me starting to get in the coffee industry, I'm looking to help and promote anyone and everyone just as much as anyone looking to help and promote me.
Yeah.
But I've reached out to some folks and I've asked, like, hey, I just want to have a sit down with you to talk about, your business or anything like that. Or, hey, where do you get your green beans from? Because, I'm going to put Misha's on spot. There's a spot out here in Alexandria. I reached out to Misha's, and I reached out to their
Green buyer?
not the green buyer, the woman who's, I think, is in charge of everything. Like, they have two
Like
separate
an ops
emails.
manager?
Right. So I reached out to her twice and asked, I'm asking about, hey, I'm trying to get some information about your green beans, because they offer an assortment of beans at this place. It's one of those places that the only places you can go in Alexandria or Virginia, Northern Virginia area, that offers maybe 30 different types of beans from different
Dang.
areas. And so I reached out, and I've been to the establishment. Reg has been to the establishment, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So we try to establish a relationship, and nothing back, and nothing back. And I don't want to be vindictive and be like, okay, I'm gonna buy your shot one day.
Look, there
But
are.
I don't. But but you see it, because it's like, I established myself as, hey, I am starting my own coffee roastery, yada, yada, yada. I'm not starting a brick and mortar. I'm just trying to get educated. And I'm reaching out for just something. And the lack of feedback or no feedback at all kind of even pushes me to go further. And that goes into that whole thing of like, well, why wouldn't you be willing to help somebody who's trying to even, you know, maybe help you or try to do business with you? Because I might want to, like, you might upcharge me on your green beans. Because if I buy from you, you know what I mean? But I don't even know if you sell green beans. But hey, I don't know who your roaster is. Put me in contact with. It wasn't that at all. But I've reached out to some individuals in this area that have been like, whatever help you need, we've got you. And I think there's a difference in those individuals. And I think if more of the world understands that, yeah, there's plenty to offer. There's plenty. If you're worried about money, you'll learn money ain't everything. But go ahead, chase that. We're chasing with our brand intent. Again, we're intentionally just trying to drive a narrative each and every season in our roast. And we're open. We're trying to help. We're trying to talk to people. We're trying to be open. We don't shut anybody down just because, like, oh, you know what I mean? I let Reg handle all the social media because I can't handle it. It's too much. So he's got to individually respond to people, because there's people who reach out and they're like, well, I don't know, why is the coffee bean yellow? And what is that? Like, why are the coffee beans green? And it's a true education of, hey, this is where coffee bean starts. You know, it starts here at a farm as a cherry, and it's actually a seed. And people are just but I'm okay to talk to people about that, but some people aren't. Some people are just like, you don't know green beans? You don't know the roasting process? Are you serious?
Oh man.
Are you a coffee drinker, bro?
You put milk
like,
in that?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Our industry is going to be better for having you in it. I vehemently believe that. And people have argued with me on that. They're like, what makes them so different? And my response is, they've done hard shit. They've done hard shit in so many different ways that it's humbled them to no end. And they're not coming in here to prove anything to anyone. They're not coming in here saying that they know how to do everything. No. They're coming in here because this is the next challenge. They're coming in here to learn. They're coming with open hearts. They're coming with open minds. They're coming humbly. And watch them crush. And have the right people standing beside them.
Yeah, that helps. But it helps that we are humble.
Absolutely.
Because we're two genuine guys. So we're literally like two really good friends, two genuine people. I'm not going to tell you, I'm the roaster, right? So I'm not going to tell you I know every simple sugar that breaks down in the process as the chemical changes in the Maillard phase. And I'm not a,
but you're learning.
Right. And I can tell you I don't know it all, but I can take you along the process as I learn it and push quality, push understanding, push excellence in what we do. And so that's what we're thriving to do. We're not trying to be, I'm not trying to be anybody else. We're just trying to effectively be who we are. I'm an analyst. He's a world-renowned artist. And we're really just trying to bring together our views and our understanding of the world and economics and art and industry, and trying to, drive a new narrative in the coffee industry, because there is color in the coffee industry. I mean, it's there, but
as white as I am, I'm a part, like as white as my skin is, I am a part of that color. Because I'm a fake white person. I'm not really a white person. No, really.
There's some crazy people out there who don't really understand that. There's some people who probably still won't understand the context of that.
Yeah. No, and I remember the first time I was kind of awakened to this idea of color. I was living in LA in 2011, And somebody said to me, "What color are you?" I'm like, I don't know. What color do you mean my skin? It was a very foreign concept to me. And I got them to explain it, and they're like, "Oh, here in America, we kind of define people by what color they are." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I'm an Australian Syrian person. What color bracket do I fit into?" They didn't even get the sarcasm and the disgust. I was disgusted by it. And then like, "Oh, so you're brown and kind of yellow because you're Asian, but still." I'm like, this is a real conundrum for this person right now.
America's big on that shit.
Yeah, so
let me tell you, like, even in the Black community, are you African American? Came from Africa? There's a lot of information out there to tell you there's plenty Black Americans that were here before slavery, like before, way before that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So are you Black American? Or are you Black? Are you colored? Like, what is, and it's been driven. It's
and
not
it's
necessarily,
important.
it's like, not been, it's not, yeah. And it's, well, what do you define yourself as?
Right.
Yeah.
They need to cubby hole you into something so that they know how to treat you. And, you know, this really infuriates me when people try to do it, because it tells me a lot of what I need to know about you and how the trajectory of our friendship or, you know, acquaintance, how we're going to connect is going to unfold. If you need me to define myself to you before we even go anywhere near a conversation, fuck you very much. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, and it's a very unfortunate thing that's here in the States, but when you go over other places, it's kind of like, what are you talking about? I think, you know, in Africa, it's tribalisms. It's like, what tribe are you? Or are you Nigerian, you Ghanaian, are you Ethiopian? Like, what are you, you know, that, you know, certain areas, but it's not like, are you African American? Are you Black? Are you these different differentiation? While I'm mixed, America has really pushed a narrative of like, you have to check that box.
Yeah.
I mean, our census does it, you know, what box are you?
Yeah.
You know, it's you have to be a tribe. You have to be a part of something. And unfortunately, it's to our detriment because we're just human beings at the end of the day.
What a great statement to end on. We are human beings at the end of the day. My life is richer for having you as a human being in it. So thanks for an amazing conversation. I don't know. That was like almost 3 hours.
Oh yeah. I couldn't even, wow. Almost went through my thing of water, so I can tell what time. But no, thanks for having me on. This is a pleasure. I look forward. I'll do it again in a heartbeat. You know,
and I would love to have you on regularly. Because
we'll set that up. Hopefully, I won't lose my job. It's like, I'm joking.
It's fine. We're building you a business that will.
You know, the interesting thing is for me is that I've had to walk a fine line, right? You know, I'm not like I'm not Snowden, so I don't like handle all these government intel things, but it's one of those interesting, being a government employee, you are supposed to be silent about certain things. You're not supposed, you might have your opinion, but we're not allowed to, you know, in the office. I worked at the Pentagon. I work at the Pentagon, but since COVID, I don't work at the Pentagon. So you don't really talk politics in the office. That's a no-no. You can get, you know, move somewhere else. But it's one of those fine lines where in this day in 2020, I don't even really care. I'd rather be wholeheartedly the man I am today and the world to figure out who Sekou is, the analyst, and then, you know, deal and let the cards fall the way they do. And I'm pushing everything in my roasting business that we can, and hopefully we'll create a great product that eventually, years from now, I could be like, remember that time when I was a government employee and worrying about my job and yada, yada, yada. So.
And what I'm going to say on that crazy woman's podcast, if it's going to get me fired or not. Well, it will have been worth it, because look, judging just from what you said on this podcast, that the way that people will be inspired to show up for themselves and for other people is worth the conversation that we've had. And I really appreciate the richness of the vulnerability that you showed in having this discussion, and the truth that you brought to it. I learn shit every time I have a conversation with you. I know that I say this every time we walk away, that I feel fed, but I really do feel fed every time.
Well, I feel fed and energized, because I'm one of those, like, all right, it's not too often, sometimes we get heard and understood. You know what I mean? That's a critical.
I just can't how somebody wouldn't understand you. You're such a fucking great person.
Thank you. And well, listen, it takes sometimes a good person to have a great communication with another great person. So
thank you. Come back.
I will. This is, let's talk about cars or something next time.
Yeah, I'm down to that, because I used to be, I used to be.
I know.
Yeah.
It's my other passion.
Everyone. Yeah. Oh, well, hey, we'll probably talk for another hour after we've hung up.
Indeed.
Peace, love, and peanut butter, sir. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.